All right, I'm back, or this might be the first video you're seeing in this series. Today I'm going to be reviewing a Shadow Dancer sword, and these are Shinken. They're sharp swords. These are in the lower price point, or lower tier line of theirs, and I wanted to talk about these specifically because of the fact that there's really a lack of reviews for these online, and I wanted you guys, if you had the same thoughts I did when deciding which ones to get. These were purchased as a gift for me this year for my birthday, and I was allowed to pick a couple, and so I chose what I chose, and I wasn't sure what I was going to get, and in order to help some of you maybe have a better idea of what you're going to get, that's why I'm making this video. So let's get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sean Hurst. I'm a practicing sword practitioner of Japanese swordsmanship as well as Filipino swordsmanship, Filipino martial arts. I've been training in the way of the blade for about 27 years now. That does not make me some phenomenal martial artist. That just makes me old, okay? I am not an expert sword appraiser. I have about 15 years of training in Kobudo Koryu, older Japanese martial arts with the sword in particular. I've got more time doing jujitsu, yawara, those sorts of empty hand karate, but with the sword about 15 years. So take what I'm saying and understand that it's from a beginner's frame of reference, maybe not a brand new beginner, but a beginner's frame of reference. So there's going to be things I miss. There's going to be words I might misuse, mispronounce. My wife is Japanese. We train together in these arts. We've been training together for about 27 years. I do have that advantage with the culture and language, but that doesn't make me by any means perfect or an expert. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. All right, so this review is on the 1095 Buffalo Koshirae Katana, or what I would just call Shinken, just means sharp sword, as opposed to an Iaito. Just for those of you that don't know the difference, in Iaito are generally made from aluminum or some other type of non-sharpenable metal, and that's done intentionally in Japan so that because of the sword restrictions, blade restrictions going on there post-World War II, unfortunately. My thoughts on this sword. This is only, I think the sword is selling for about $330. So keep in mind that my opinion about this is in reference to the price point. I'm just going to jump right in, start with the saya, and say that this sword, like the other one I'm reviewing, the shitodome, it's quite impressive how they managed to fit these. These are these little tiny fittings that go inside there that the sageo runs through, okay? And the thing that's impressive to me is that they stay in there. I was going to replace the sageo on this one, and because it's not really badly damaged, sometimes they'll get little pilling on them, or the threads will get pulled, and they can come in pretty bad condition. This one did not. I thought the color was kind of nice, actually. It was subtle but matched the saya pretty well and the rest of the fittings, so I just decided to leave it. But I had started to pull it out, and the shitodome on this one are very firmly in there. So if you've watched my other review, you know that's 2 for 2, technically 3 for 3, with the Shadow Dancer swords, that these shitodome are firmly in there. And that, I think, is a really good thing. If you like them, I tend to pull them out if I'm going to be swapping out sageo, because it's a nightmare if you don't have a brand new sageo to get it through them, because the hole is quite small. And with the frayed ends of these, which are designed to look like that, they can be quite difficult to get through some of these, which I think is how they end up getting badly, the pilling or the threads pulled on them, is when they're being put through or mounted. That's my opinion. Now, I don't know how well this is coming out in the video, but this saya does have little bits of gold specks in it. What I like about this is it's quite subtle. I've got a very bright light on this right now to help with the filming, so how well that comes out, it's very, very subtle. With some of the arts I practice, because they are kobudo, I could actually rock this in training, and my instructor, unless I'm outside on a bright sunny day, probably wouldn't notice. If my sensei did, he might go, hey, it's too flashy for class, right? But having said that, it's subtle enough that it's not obnoxious. I've got some red saya he wouldn't let me train with in class, and that's fine. Schools that are more traditional are going to be like that. They want the tuxedo black fittings, and I understand that. That comes from a sense of uniformity, and particularly during the Edo period in Japan, where when the samurai had to go to Edo for a certain amount of time, I think it was 6 months, to accompany their lord, they all had to have their fittings matching, and generally was, kind of black saya and dark tsukamaki were kind of the thing, and subtle suba and whatnot. And I think that was for a uniformity thing. Don't quote me on it, but that seems to be my understanding. But it's also been speculated by others much smarter than me in the historical field of Japan, that when the samurai were back home, they had much flashier fittings depending on their status and rank. So keep that in mind. And we see them. You can go online. The museum, Tokyo, I think, has a big sword museum, and you'll see very, very flashy fittings, including red saya and whatnot, that are from certain periods of time. And tachi were incredibly flashy, and those are much older than, most of them are much older than the katana because they predate them. All right, getting back to this one. So yes, it's got gold specks. The color of the saya is kind of a chocolate brown. I guess the whole theme here is kind of that sort of, reminds me of a Hershey bar. My wife would love this sword. So the suba, I think, is brass, is my guess. And let me focus on the saya here for a few more seconds, then we'll get into everything else. So once again, like the other saya that I reviewed, it is tapered. It does have a sort of thin profile, which I like, versus a maru, or kind of more rounded saya shape. I prefer that. It also has a wedge shape, which matches the shape of the blade, the hot side or the edge versus the mune or spine of the blade. That's really important if you're doing a lot of iai or bato jutsu, as I mentioned in the other video, because oftentimes when you draw, all right, saya biki is occurring. You're pushing the saya back as you're drawing nikitsuke, right, your first cut, and then as you're going in and doing whatever you're doing with the iai or bato jutsu kata, when you go to retrieve the end of the saya to perform, after you do chiburi, when you're going to perform noto, right, you want to make sure that thing is pointing up. And so the shape, that really nice profile this one has, is easy for me. When I grab it, I know that I've got this thing facing the right way. I don't have to think about, oh no. And if I've grabbed it the wrong way, I've been doing it long enough now that I know to twist the saya. But when you're first training, a saya like this, in my opinion, okay, is really nice. Now, I will say the only reason I probably practice with the Shinken, Iai, and Bato Jutsu is because the particular koryu I'm a part of requires it. So that's what I practice with. I practice with a razor sharp sword, or very sharp. I would not recommend starting that way. I had already been training for a number of years in other koryu, and particularly Bato Jutsu, with a lot of experience before I was just jumped into using a Shinken for that kind of practice. But I do like that tapered feel. I love the shape of it. It for me, and those of you that do a lot of this kind of training, you know what I'm talking about. I forget what company it is. It's Jason Yoon's company. He's an awesome guy. Motohara is the Evolution blades. Motoharas do the same kind of tapering, and so I really like that at a sort of this price point. I mean, it's not a Motohara. It's $330, but it's really nice for the price point. And that's what I want to drive home, is that it's got features and stuff that you don't normally see on a sword of this price point, and tastefully done. That's the other thing. Oftentimes, if you saw gold specks on a sword like this, it would be really bright or obnoxious. And it's, if you're like me and you do your homework, I know I've seen the saya for this particular sword. I don't know if it was Shadow Dancer, but one of the websites that had it featured, had a lot bigger gold flecks in it and some green, and it was this gorgeous saya. That is not what it comes with. It comes with this more subtle chocolate brown with these tiny little gold specks. This one does have a little bit of, I don't know if it's just from my hands. It has a gloss to it. It's not a flat finish, so I can't tell if it's my fingerprints or if they wrap the sageo around it with the traditional way they wrap it up as it's going to ship. And oftentimes they do that. They put it right on the saya when the lacquer is still hardening, and it ruins it. I don't see that here, but I do see, I think it's just smudging from my hands. I make that point because to me that's an attention to detail kind of thing that you normally don't get with swords at this price point. You know, you love it, hate it, whatever. All right, moving on to the remainder of the sword. Now, as far as the hot or the hot is the edge, but really what I want to say is the whole blade itself. I don't know how well this will show up. I'll try to include some photos, but I think this is a choji or a clover hamon pattern. I've got my laptop down there, so I'm looking to see if I can get that data for you guys. But either way, the hamon on these are really nice. The hamon itself is just a line. The cloudy part that in this case is above it, that direction, okay? I always think of that as below, but above it, closest to the edge, that cloudy part is, I believe, chemically etched in. It's not polished in. But the fact that they did it, and they did it on the right part of the edge, to me, is mwah. A lot of these swords at this price point and even higher do a reverse hamon, and I hate that. I hate that they etch, or this part's cloudy, and then the part closest to the edge is the polished part, the you know, the shinier bit. I don't like that. It's not the traditional look, and to me, that's why I don't like it. As far as this sword had the same problem I mentioned in the other video where the habaki was very loose, and on this one I put in an additional, I don't know if you can see it, I squeezed in an additional seppa. So you have these, they're about the size of if you guys ever went to Disney and put a penny in these machines, they'll flatten the penny out. Has a kind of oblong, oblique shape to it. That's what that disc is there. It's kind of like a washer. I had to slip an extra one in there. There was that much space. And I think, and I said this in the other video, I think that had to do with the subas had a burr in them. And so when they slid all the bits in there, you put the habaki on, and then the seppa, and then the suba, and then the other seppa, and then they put the handle or the tsuka on, right? When they just drilled a hole in there without paying attention to the fact that the suba had caught and wasn't all the way forward. It should have been tapped further forward with a hammer. So then when everything was put together, they just slapped it in the saya and out it went, and this was very, very loose. Easy fix, again, at this price point. That's the only thing wrong with it, fine. The sword is just so wonderful at this, for 330 bucks, are you kidding me? I will say, if you get this, it's 1095 steel is very heavy. I forget that when I get these occasionally. I have another Shinken that's 1095. It's heavy. So if you're not, you know, if you're used to like a mono steel, that just keep that in mind, right? No big deal. Again, really great kind of a lawnmower kind of blade for, I think, for tameshigiri, especially if you have a lot of experience. But it's not razor sharp, if I remember. Oh, this one is. This one's pretty. So this is Sean from the future. Real quick, I just want to let y'all know that I spoke with one of the representatives over at Sordis, who said they've been working with Shadow Dancer on the issue of the sword's sharpness. So they're aware of the issue, and they've reached out to Shadow Dancer. And I don't want to say what the solution is right now, but they are working on a solution to improve the sharpness of the swords so that there is, he didn't say consistency, the representative I talked to, but that's how I took it. So that will be more consistency, because this sword is actually much sharper than the one in the other video I reviewed, the 1095, 1045. But the Buffalo one I have here is actually pretty sharp, and as heavy as it is, I think you might even be able to use it as a gyoza cutter. But those of you that have more expertise in that area, you can let me know, right? When I say gyoza, I don't mean dumplings, I mean bamboo. So at any rate, hopefully that's helpful. Sharp, but it's not razor sharp, you know. And the blade geometry is not really, you know, meant for those of you that do a lot of tameshigiri know what I mean. You tend to get a much, I call it deeper blade, but wider blade. They call that wide, and narrow, which is a good profile for cutting. This is not really that kind of profile, but it's traditional, which is why I like it. Nothing wrong with that type of profile. It's just, I like this one because it can function in many different ways. Now, the only negative with this is I would hate to mar up the hamon, and for a $330 sword, I'm not going to do tameshigiri and then turn around and have it polished one day. It doesn't make any sense that, you know, depending on who you're getting your sword polishing from, I'm going to guess you're going to spend shy of $1,000, maybe more. So why, so I just don't use these for tameshigiri. I have other swords that don't have a hamon that I use specifically for that. Maybe if you guys enjoy these videos, I'll do some more on some of those other swords. As far as the tsuba goes, this handguard, it's actually kind of nice. I'm impressed. It's a buffalo. I don't know how well that'll show. It's a buffalo themed, hence the name buffalo in the name of the sword. It's actually nice. It's subtle enough that there's actually quite a bit of detail in the tsuba. I'll try to show that without being too muddy or too gaudy, which I actually like. Typically with swords at this price point, the fittings are trash, and I end up swapping the tsuba out almost always, which comes to the why I have 2 of these swords. So essentially what happened was there was a flaw. I want to say what, because I think it was just, I don't think it was carelessness in the way this will come across. The first one that I received, there was a problem with the tsuka. And when I'd taken it apart to kind of examine it and clean it and whatnot, I noticed there was a problem with it. And so I let them know. I contacted first the folks at Swortis, where this was purchased, and they reached out to Shadow Dancer, and they got back to me within about 24. They got back to me right away. Swortis did, and then keep in mind that message is going to China, time difference, going back to Swortis, and coming to me within about 48 hours. I had an answer. All I wanted was the tsuka fixed, replaced. I didn't need, so just the handle. They could have just sent me a new one. They said, "No, tell you what, we'll just send you a new sword because of the issue." And it was very specific. So don't think for a second you're going to get a free sword if you just go, "I have a problem with the tsuka." It was a very specific issue. They were kind enough. And this is all going on during the tariffs issues. So somebody had to pay for these things to get through customs with the tariffs and everything. Plus they sent me out another sword at cost. So that wasn't a cheap resolution. So, and this is before Matthew's video dropped, the issues that Shadow Dancer was having with the metals, if you're not familiar. And so I was thoroughly impressed with their customer service. I was blown away because, again, all I wanted was a new handle that I assumed, it would be relatively the same shape, and that I could, any sort of customization, you guys can see that, they're pretty much the same shape. Any sort of customization that would be needed, I would be able to do to get the new handle on. But they just replaced the whole doggone sword, and in fact, the newer one that came out, in my opinion, was even better. I like the Sagio a little bit better. The color's a little lighter. It wasn't as torn up as this one was. So I was very grateful. So now that I have 2 of the same one, I can use the one with the issues possibly for some tameshigiri or maybe destruction testing. I hate doing that on swords. A lot of us, if you watch Matthew Jensen's videos, we kind of cringe, like, oh no. But we're also watching those videos going, oh, what's going to happen, So, yeah, anyway, if you want to see me do destruction testing with that, let me know. Or maybe I should just, if you think I should send it to Matthew, let me know. And maybe I can work that out with him if he's interested. Yeah, so the other fittings on this, same thing, the Fuchi Kashira, the fittings on the tsuba itself, I like. They're this kind of hammered, really elegant almost look. It's very simple. I don't care about the shitadome on these. They haven't come loose or anything in practice, so that's great. I tend to like simple is better because, more points of failure, the more likely something is to fail. These might just be cast that way. I can't tell. I can get a fingernail under there. I think they're separate. Again, nice idea, elegantly done. I worry, will it hold up because of the kind of grip I have from the Koryu I practice with. I'm doing it incorrectly because I don't want to give away how you're supposed to do it, but the hand goes past this, and so what can happen is these can get pulled off very often, especially if the knots on here aren't done well. Now, tsukamaki, right? How tight is it? It's actually quite tight. This is a faux leather of some sort. I didn't think to ask what type, but it is. The only thing that worries me is this is real Samegawa, real race skin. It's not a full wrap, but it is real race skin panels. I didn't mention this on the other sword in the other video, but I'll mention it here. They did a good job. I don't see ledges, which is nice. Those of you that don't know what that is, sometimes when they use panels for this instead of a full wrap, you get this defined edge where the panel ends, and you can feel it when you grab it. It tends not to look very attractive. So this is an example of a sword where you've got panels here, Samegawa panels, but you can also see the ledges that are left behind. And it looks pretty bad on this one because you can see those lines, in my opinion. It makes it look kind of rough. These don't have that. They're very well done. I like the shape. It's kind of a wasted, meaning it narrows here and then goes back out. I'll get into the dimensions of it in a minute, but this is real ray skin. I'm really impressed. It's coarse. It feels good in my hand in the sense that I can tell it's real ray skin. So, man, Shadow Dancer, kudos. Great job, guys. Having said that, going back to what I was saying about the faux leather here, the only thing that worries me with this real ray skin is this leather snapping. I have no idea how tough it is, being that I think it's faux leather. You know, again, it's a $330 sword. Something's gonna go wrong eventually and fail on this thing, just due to the fact that there's no way to get good enough materials in at that price point without them losing a lot of money. So, you know, you get what you pay for. But for what I put into this thing, it's incredible. Now, I will say, I don't know if it's just my eye, though I've been using swords long enough. The tsukamaki they did on these, I don't care about the unevenness, although yeah, this one's kind of uneven. I won't make excuses. Again, for this price point, it's very tight. You know, nothing's come apart. To me, that's good enough at this price point. But I don't know what you guys think. These seem smaller. The actual ito, the actual cord they used, seems to be narrower. As far as the width of the ito, the cord that's being used for the tsuka, or the handles here, I'm pretty sure this horrible tsukamaki job on this one is mine. I did this probably 10, 11 years ago. This was a Skajiro forge that had come apart, and I wanted to put new fittings on it anyway. So I did a whole new set of everything, and then when I did, I went ahead and did the tsukamaki. This is actually real silk. You can get ito in different widths. I know that much. These are definitely different. I'll show you with a ruler. It's going to be a little bit tricky because unlike the leather where you can see the line in between where the two halves of the ito are, it's really kind of hard to see that because of the way the blue silk is, the texture of it. So anyway, if we just use the ruler, the line here, you can kind of see where I'm opening that up to help. All right, this is just over 1/2 centimeter. Okay, this is going to be sort of the opposite, is just under, trying to line that up. Yeah, it's under 1/2 centimeter. I don't know how well this is going to translate because even though the camera is in front of my face here, the way it's set up, I can't see very well. But from my measurements, they are different in width. So, yeah, there you go. Not good, not bad, just different. So like the other video, as I mentioned, these handles are only 10 inches on the nagasa, or the blade itself is, I think, about 27.5 inches approximately, or 71 centimeters to a 10-inch handle or tsuka. And I like that because what it does is it puts the point of balance out on the monouchi, right? This portion that's meant to be used for cutting. So as I'm holding it, if I'm standing in a seigan stance, right, it feels like it's where it needs to be. If I were doing tameshigiri with this, the weight feels like it's out there at closer to the tip, which is where I want it. That's where I want to feel it. That's how I was taught in the systems that I've learned. And so, if your system is different, I'm not saying you're wrong at all. I only have the systems I've learned from to compare that to. So keep in mind, different systems have different length swords. Asayama Ichiden Ryu, I think it is, they use longer blades. Totally fine, right? It fits their methodology. the way I use the blade fits the methodology I've learned, and so therefore the size and dimensions suit that. So keep that in mind. Just because your system may be different doesn't make either one wrong, as long as there is a purpose. You know, it's purpose driven. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind it? Unfortunately, in arts, these as old as some of the ones I train in, sometimes that gets lost. It happens, right? We don't know what the purpose is behind things anymore, and that can't be helped for various reasons. So anyway, the handle length, love it. Love the balance. This is a heavier sword. Talked about the issue that I had, the habaki. Man, what am I missing anything? I don't think so. So anyway, what would I recommend the sword? Well, that depends on what you're using it for. I wouldn't recommend it for Iai if you're required to have a Shinken, a sharp sword for Iai, and there's two reasons for that. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of flashiness, even though it's subtle, of the saya will probably get you in trouble if you're practicing in kobudo. And the weight. Now, if you're a much larger guy, above 6 feet, to give you a reference, I'm 5'9". If you're well above 6'2", 6'3", the weight may not bother you as much, just because of where it's going to feel, and the sword's definitely going to feel shorter to you. That being said, and again, the hamon, I'd feel real guilty about using it for tameshigiri, but because if you guys don't know, if you're cutting straw mats, the tatami mat coverings, right? When they get used, they get sold off to American companies. I think it's Nihonzashi may still sell them, and they get it in bulk, and then you can purchase them from them. And this is basically straw mats that you soak in water, depending on the style that you study, may determine how long, a few hours. I used to soak them. Don't worry about that. Anyway, however long you're supposed to, according to your school. The material that they're made out of is abrasive to the sword, and so it's going to scratch it. So if you have a really nice hamon on it, you're scratching it up. But with the weight of this one, I don't know that I would use it for Iai, which then sort of leaves you, you're either getting it as a collector item, which is fine at the price point. If you just want something to look nice, this will do it. But I would say between those two, Iai, Bato Jutsu, or Tameshigiri, it should do you fine, because that added weight will get you through things too. Yeah. All right. So hopefully that helps. I didn't talk about some of the other fittings because to me they're, they're all right. I have no opinion on them. I think overall for $330, this is way better than other swords. I guess I'll conclude with that. The fittings are nice. They're not gaudy. They're not overly what? I mean, I've had some really bad swords at higher prices, and this one is definitely more subtle, nicer. It has a lot of features that I would love to have at swords that are more expensive. If the blade itself were a little lighter, oh my goodness, then you'd have a sword you could use pretty much any time. So, that being said, this is just my opinion. Again, I'm not an expert in terms of historical swords and whatnot. I have the experience I have. I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of sword shows over the years because of what my wife does as a translator, translating Japanese films. You can find a lot of those at Samurai DVD. I think it's just .com. And so we would go to the sword shows. Sometimes they would sell the films there, and we'd go visit her boss and whatnot and peruse around. And so that was really great for me and our kids, and for her as well, because we can get hands-on with real Japanese Nihonto and access those where sometimes you don't have access to that, and you get to see them up close, and you get to see the actual fittings, antique blades, and really high quality stuff. And so it does give me a bit of a frame of reference to be able to compare these two, even though I don't own any of those blades, and I probably never would, because even if I had the money, I'd feel bad about using it. That's my opinion. Anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you've stuck with it this long, you are a very patient person. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless. Take care.